Look at the election. What did Harris raise, like $2.3 billion? $2.3 billion to run for office, a clown. Kamala hilarious. What did Trump get? He only got $1.2 billion. You can't run for office without any of the money. They call this a democracy. It's a democracy. If the politicians were all Italian, they call it a mafia, all right? The bigs own everything. This was the Trends Journal back in 2012. The Prince of Peace became violent and drove the money changers out of the temple. The money changers are running the country. The banks, the bandits. Look who owns the S&P 500. 3 companies: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Look what you have to pay on credit cards. Some of the numbers are up to 39%. Hey, the mafia is charging 10%. 39%. What is the average? Like 22%? And they get away with it. You got a little piece of scum, an arrogant little nothing of a boy with a bad attitude, Bill Clinton. You can hear this guy bullshit for free, but when he speaks to Goldman Sachs gangs, he gets $300,000 an hour. All right? Oh, this is the Bill Clinton that did away with the Federal Communications Act. Oh, brought NAFTA, sucked out our jobs into Mexico. Oh, brought China into the World Trade Organization, sucked the jobs out of America into China, cheap labor. Oh, this is the Bill Clinton, killed the Glass-Steagall Act. The rich own the country. We're nothing more than plantation workers of Slavelandia. The middle class is shot. That's why Trump won, because the working class is a starving class. And all the joy's gone. You know, I grew up at the perfect time. I grew up right after the war. The energy of my parents, my aunts and uncles. This is one of my books, by the way. What Zizzy gave Honey Boy. The very thing I've written is my favorite. Zizzy's the Neapolitan dialect for auntie. And it's about growing up in the Bronx as Italian American and what the country used to be. And the fun that my aunts and uncles used to have all the time. The holidays were sensational. Always laughing, never a word about politics. And now it's all gone. There's a picture of my parents' wedding, 1934. Look how well dressed they are. My father worked in a fish store. They were laborers. Everybody dressed elegantly. And now it's a freak show. Once upon a time, there was a thing called the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Now you don't have to step. They went out of business. You know why? You don't have to step right up, see the fat man, see the tattooed lady, see the lady with the beard. They're out in the street everywhere. Look how this country's gone down. Again, read this week's Trends Journal about the obesity rates. Mothers aren't cooking for their kids anymore. They put them in nursing homes for children that people call daycare centers. You're out of your mind when you're a kid and you got a stranger feeding you crap. Your mother's coming home from work. She's feeding you crap. She ain't cooking anymore. My mother used to cook all day long. There was 7 of us. Look what's going on. The obesity rates. And it's costing us billions and billions of dollars because of the poor health of these people. So I say we should have a fat tax. The more you weigh, the more you pay. Oh, no, take your drugs. Biden wants to give us, we got to pay for their drugs to take drugs so they could lose weight. How about stop eating crap? Oh, by the way, first book I worked on back in the 1980s when hardly anybody was talking about this, natural healing. So it's not just talk, it's action. And I have an honorary doctorate from the National University of Health Sciences for the work I've done in complementary and integrative medicine. Not talked about at all. When the COVID war went on, don't get in good health. Don't build up your immune system. Take this shot. Take this shot. All right? The only magazine in the world, the Trends Journal, is talking about what nobody else is. And that's the office building bust. Go by the data. Google up Castle Systems with a K. Put in office occupancy rate. Oh, it's moved up a bit. It's up to 53%. According to data, the office vacancy rate, meaning nobody there, 24%. There are between $2 to $4 trillion worth of commercial real estate debt coming due over the next 2 years. You have all these vacant buildings. I'm down the city 2 weeks ago. My buddy and I walked all the way up for rent, whole blocks. We walked over to 48th Street and Park Avenue, whole blocks, retail space for rent. Tracking trends is the understanding of where we are and how we got here to see where we're going. Let's go back to the COVID war. Get back in your house. You can't go to work. All right. People now, they're staying home week after week, month after month, year after year. And they're saying to themselves, I'd be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to commute an hour and a half each way. I'd be out of my mind. I'm not going to do that anymore. Now, I'm the guy that say I have 12 stories in a building. I got everybody in cubicles. I don't see them anyway. Yeah, stay home a couple of days a week. We don't need you here. I don't need all this office space. I'll make more money. There's going to be defaults on offices, commercial real estate, the likes of which we've never seen before, not repeated, nothing mentioned. A Wall Street Journal came up with a big article this week about how they're converting these empty office spaces into apartments. Total BS. You read to almost the end of the article, it's about 1.7% of the vacant spaces. Buildings built within the last 50 years are non-convertible. Fact. About 3 months ago, an office building on 50th Street, 2006, it sold for $320 million. It went up for auction, sold for $8.5 million. The building's in the middle of the street. You don't have windows here, don't have windows there, don't have windows in the back, only in the front. Non-convertible for housing. No one's talking about this. You're going back to the banks. And then look what they did, how under the Biden administration, they wanted to have banks bigger reserves and they pulled back on it. They don't have the money to cover these losses. There's going to be trillions of dollars worth of losses. No one is talking about it. And to me, that's going to crash the markets. And then going back to Trump, the guessing game. Will he lower interest rates to keep jacking up the economy? Let's go back to 2018, December. The NASDAQ was down 9%. The S&P and Dow were down 10%. It was the worst December since the Great Depression in December 1931. What did Trump do? He forced Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. They lowered them in January 2019. Oh, what happened? Oh, the repo crisis? Oh, we'll forget about that. Don't talk about that. People have no idea. If Trump lowers interest rates, the dollar's going to go down. The deeper the dollar falls, the higher gold prices will go. And then there's the BRICS. They've had enough of America's socioeconomic hegemony and geopolitical hegemony. It is going to be the wave of the future. And we're only a country of 345 million people. Where's China have 1.4 billion? Again, we're going nowhere. And so that's the beginning. Again, we have to see what's going to happen. But to answer your question, the office building bust is going to cause the banks to go bust. It's a difficult task. We have to see what they're going to do. You talked about how much we bailed out the banks. According to the Levy Institute at Bard College, $29 trillion. As people losing their homes, subprime mortgage scam. Remember that one? And what does Blackstone buy up all the homes now? And now look how many homes are owned by the venture capitalists, the hedge fund groups. That didn't exist before the panic of '08. And now they own like 25, 27% or something, the homes. People can't afford to buy homes. And again, by their deeds you shall know them. Their words don't mean anything. If Trump lives by some of his words, I think it's going to be positive for the economy. And I think the markets will go up again if he lowers interest rates. This is the guy, by the way, that people forget. He's the one that called a state of emergency on Black Friday, March 2013. Locked down the country. Brought interest rates down to zero and dumped in $3 or $4 trillion to artificially prop up the economy. And then Biden kept it going, pumping it even more. So they've created this horror story that's not going to be fixed. Look what Bitcoin's doing since Trump got in there. It's up over 40%. I think the future's from dirty cash to digital trash. This is your cover of your Trends Journal back in 2014. See how happy that guy looks? It's the United States overthrow of the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine, brought by the United States. And here's the article. This is written by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. Washington is driving the world to the final war. World hegemony is not a right America has earned. Washington concluded that Russia needed to be confronted with or distracted by problems that would leave the Russian government less confident or able to counter Washington's aggression elsewhere. Ukraine presented the perfect opportunity for Washington to advance its hegemonic agenda. In a speech at the National Press Club last December, and anybody could look this up, December 2013, Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland boasted that Washington had invested $5 billion in non-governmental organizations for the purpose of the NGOs to, quote, teach democracy in Ukraine. There's no way that Ukraine is going to win this war. If Napoleon, who left Poland with 420,000 troops to attack Moscow in 1812 and came back with 10,000, if Germany, who launched Hitler's Operation Barbarossa, killed some 25 million Russians. And according to the John F. Kennedy's speech to graduating students at American University in June of 1963, Kennedy said they lost their factories, their farms, their homes, their land from the equivalent of Chicago East. And they were the first ones to defeat the Germans. What makes you think Ukraine is going to be able to defeat Russia? They have very, very advanced technology. They are becoming a self-sustaining economy. They have the human and natural resources they need to be self-sustaining. Because when all those companies left, Biden's words were, when the war began back in 2022, February 24th, Biden said, we're going to punish Putin. He didn't punish Putin. They became more self-sustaining. All those businesses that left, the Russian people took over. So going back, we are on the verge of nuclear war. They're warning us. And now you got these clown boys like Macron and Boris Johnson and these other people shooting their mouth off that we need, and the Americans, more weapons to keep fighting this war, the proxy war. We're at war with Russia. If I asked you, I said, listen, man, give me some hand grenades. I want to go blow the guy's brains out across the street. And you gave them to me. You're an accessory to the crime. So we are on the verge of nuclear annihilation. World War I's not ancient history. We have crazy, demonic people that are running the world. So to me, what I suggest to everybody is get in the best shape that you can, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, because you're in the fight for your life. And it's up to we, the people, to change this. You know, when they had I used to be on Hong Kong TV back in 2019 when there were protests going on. And there were like, out of a city of 7.5 million people, over 1 million people were taking to the streets in protest of what China was doing in overtaking Hong Kong. And I take a break, like 20 minutes with the guy, and I say, Frank, so what's going on? Mr. Celente, we're not going to stop. We're not going to let the Chinese take over. Again, 7.5 million people, 1 million people taking to the streets. You can't get 1 million people out of 345 million people in America to take to the streets for peace. Where are they? And by the way, China ended the protests in Hong Kong when they launched the COVID war on their Chinese Lunar New Year, the year of the rat, in January 2020. That was the end of it. And there were protests going on, by the way, all over the world. It was one of our top trends for 2020, New World Disorder. There were yellow vests in France, South Africa, Algeria. Millions of people were taken to the streets all over the world in protest of lack of basic living standards, government corruption, crime, violence, etc. When the COVID war happened, you can't go out, can't protest. The billionaires, they run the country. Hey, Musk, how about donating $1 billion to Occupy Peace? It's chump change for you. You're worth almost $1 trillion. Hey, how about Bezos? How about $1 billion? How about Buffett? You know, I have 3 of the most historic buildings in America. It's on the only corner in America with pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings. And Kingston was the first capital of New York State before the British burnt it down. One of my tenants was Warren Buffett's son. He has a Novo Foundation. I had Ralph Nader up here, top people. Not a penny for peace. Where are the billionaires? Where they all got lockjaw? Or they hang, oh yeah, I'm stupid. How dumb can I be? See, these billionaires are smarter than all of us. Because when they die, they're going to make these huge, huge coffins and take all that money with them. Look at the little freak show. Where's Gates and Zuckerberg? Not a penny for peace, because they're all pieces of crap. You can't do it without money. End of story. You ask it what could happen. It can't happen until the people unite for peace. That's the way I see it. Berlin was grander than Paris before it was bombed out. And in the 1930s, the Germans, with the height of Western civilization scientifically, technologically, culturally, why didn't the people stop this? We're losing. Where were the people to take to the streets and say, stop, we had enough? I said, I can't leave this country. I'm only me because I'm a Napolitano, born in the Bronx, born to be free. Love it or leave it. No, you leave it. You don't tell me what to do. I went to jury duty here. And the guy said, did you see that picture over my shoulder? He said, that's John Jay, the first Supreme Court judge of America. The Constitution that was written for New York State, it was written in Kingston when Kingston was the capital. He said over 70% of America's Constitution comes from the Constitution that was written here. So I do everything I can to bring back the spirit of our founding fathers, which 3 words now are dirty words in American politics: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They're gone. And so that's why I own these buildings. And that's why I fight for peace.